It's well documented that hobbies like gardening are supposed to be incredibly good for your mental health as well as your physical health. And I think that's true. But when you are feeling incredibly stressed and burned out, adding in an additional almost job, which gardening does become, especially in the spring and summer, it can really finish you off. And that's what it's done for me. So this video is for anyone who has been feeling stressed, who has been feeling burned out, and who has been trying to garden on top of everything else that life is throwing at them. And if nothing else, this is for future Leanne to come back to when she is back in that place, to look back on and look at the lessons that I've learned this summer. So if that's you, have a sit down, make yourself a drink, know that you are doing absolutely brilliantly, and see if you can pick up some tips from what I have learned over the last few weeks. So the first thing I've learned, and it may seem really obvious to a lot of you, and I guess it was to me, but there was challenges involved, is to make things as easy as possible. So look at the way that you are working, look at the things that you need to do that you're not, and try and automate them or make them as easy as you possibly can. So for me this year, that was watering the allotment and watering the polybunnel and the garden. Now the garden especially was a bit of a sticking point for me because literally it's my backyard. And I think the issue was the time that it was taking me. And I was just, when you are already burnt out and stressed, you don't want to add another chore to the list, right? I have an outdoor tap, but it is in the front of the house down the driveway. And I do have a garden. I do have a gate from the garden to the driveway, but I was still finding that walking from here to the front of the house, filling up a watering can and walking back 20 times a day was not something I wanted to do. And I'll be honest, I really beat myself up for that. And I was saying to myself, you know, you don't even want to water the plants in your back garden. Are you really a passionate gardener? And it took me a long time to just say to myself, do you know what, girl, make it easy on yourself. So what did I do? Just fishing out a little woodlouse there. I installed a hose pipe, which again seems really obvious, but I think part of the issue for me was I was mentally beating myself up for needing a hose pipe. So there is a hose pipe now permanently attached to the tap in the front garden. I have attached it to the wall outside of the house so that we don't run over it with the cars, and now I just pull it out, water the garden, water the polybunnel and reel it back in when I'm done. It seems like a really simple change and it seems really unnecessary when you have a tap so close to your garden, but when you are so tired and burnt out, making things as easy as possible is key. So my tip here isn't install a hose pipe. It's okay to make things even easier than they are. It doesn't make you a bad gardener. It doesn't make you a lazy gardener. It just means that you are trying to economize on the little time and brain space that you have. Hi, Editing Leanne here. Now, some areas of the UK have been experiencing water shortages, and as a result, hosepipe bans have been put in place.
Where are my hose at?
I haven't seen them.
So please adhere to the hosepipe bans in your area. Know the rules, know the exemptions, and just don't be an arsehole about it. So the second thing I've learned this year is knowing where to skimp and knowing where to splurge. And that could be with your time, with your energy, or in my case, with money. I am a big believer that gardening doesn't have to be an expensive hobby. I have done a video about zero cost ways to garden. If you want to see that, I will drop the link in the description box below. But there are some things where I think it pays off to splurge and spend more in the offset. And for me this year, that was compost. So wanting to save money and wanting to buy a bulk amount of compost I went for the cheapest available, and for me that was the B&Q Verve compost, thinking, well, you know, it's only going to be temporary, it's only to start my plants off and then they're going to go in the ground. What I realised is that compost is a load of crap. If I'm honest with you. I've actually started a box somewhere, I don't know where it is. I've started a little box somewhere of shit I found in my compost, and I have found plastic, I found beads, I found wire, I found glass. It's very, very poor quality compost, and I suppose in my case I got what I paid for. And what happened to my plants? Well, great question. You'll be surprised to hear they did not do very well. I suppose the Verve compost, where it's full of plastic and glass, it didn't leave much room for nutrients. It's also a very chunky compost, so not good for seed sowing really. And this isn't me trying to slate B&Q Verve. It's just me saying the compost that I bought was not fit for the purpose I wanted it for. So what I ended up doing later on in the season was buying 2 tons of mushroom compost from a local supplier, got it delivered to the allotment, and that stuff is so much better quality. So next year I'm going to think about what I really need to invest in for quality and for the health of my plants and for the health of myself, my mental health. Spend the money there and save money elsewhere. So for you, that could be, doesn't have to just be compost, that could be on tools, for instance. Do you need every tool under the sun to be a gardener? No. Frankly, I use maybe 3 tools up the allotment, and that is a garden fork, a hoe, and my hori knife. Everything else has pretty much stayed in the shed. So think about the space you've got, think about the way you like to garden, because it could well be different to me, and then think about the places where you could invest your money or your time, and think about places where you could save, and it will definitely pay off in the long run. So lesson 3, and this has been a big one for me, and something I need to apply to the rest of my life as well, not just gardening, but that is little and often. I don't want to say screwed myself over, but I really made my own life difficult back in the spring. And I think a lot of gardeners do this. I don't think I'm alone. But when that weather starts picking up and you get longer days and warmer weather, it's very easy to get excited. I think, oh my God, I need to get going on the garden. So for me, that was with seed sowing. I probably spent about £100 on seeds this year, and I just got really excited, and I started sowing them all at the same time. Why? Because the weather was brightening up, it was warmer, I knew I needed to get them in the spring in order to get that harvest in the summer, and I was just really excited about it. And it also helps that seed sowing is really easy to do. Do you know what's not easy to do? And that is potting on and finding spaces for all of those plants once they've got bigger and the weather isn't warm enough to put them outside. So lesson 3 has led me nicely on to lesson 4, because they are quite closely linked, and I think the solution is going to be the same. But lesson 4 is manage what you have. It's very easy to be overambitious with gardening and think things are going to be much easier than they actually are. Case in point, I currently have 3 allotment plots, which is actually insane, I'll be honest. What happened there? Well, I explained in my last video why I have a 3rd, so I'm not going to beat myself up too much over that one because the reasons are good and I am going to be giving up the other 2. But I took on a 2nd allotment plot way too early because I thought I had outgrown my original. I put in the beds that I wanted to and thought, well, that's it, I've outgrown it, I need more space, and got the 2nd plot. I didn't need to do that. I could have just planned the space a lot better and looked into vertical gardening, multi-crop sowing. I could have looked into succession sowing, crop rotation. I could have done all of that, but instead I just went, nope, need more space. And if that is probably the biggest mistake I made this season, I'll be honest, because I have wasted a lot of time. I wouldn't say I've wasted money on it, but I have wasted a lot of stress thinking about, oh my god, I can't cope with the 2 plots I've got, why am I doing such a terrible job? And I think that's been the cause of me thinking that I'm not a good gardener. I am a good gardener. We're all good gardeners, whatever our skill level. As long as we care, we're good gardeners. I was just a very overwhelmed gardener. So, I mean, this situation for me is pretty much fixed now. So once the cropping has finished on the last 2 plots, which should be sort of next month, I'll be closing those down and clearing them off, ready to hand over to the next person. And I will just be sticking with my 1 plot at leaf and ground, which will be much easier to manage. It's a much better size, and I will also go in with the knowledge that succession sowing and properly planning is very, very important. I don't know why I decided just not to plan this year. I think I was worried about procrastinating through planning, and that actually just doing was much better. And in that I was very wrong. Also, I've been trying to do YouTube, and planning things does not make a good video. Doing does. But in doing that, it means I've missed several weeks of uploads. And I wouldn't say my channel suffered as a result. Thank you for 200 subs, by the way. That was very exciting. But I'm not in the place I want to be, and I'm not sharing as much as I want because I've been burned out. So, what was the takeaway there? Manage what you have. That doesn't have to be allotment plots. Not everybody has the opportunity to get 3 allotment plots. I've been very lucky. But that could be, again, with your seed sowing. That could even be not even gardening related. It could be hobbies. That could be social engagements. Manage what you have. Don't keep thinking more. Just enjoy what you've got. Be grateful for it and make the most of it. Right, I'm going to stop what I'm doing now for the last point, because I think this is the most important, and it is applicable to everything in life, not just gardening. And I think the reason why it's the best point is probably because it's not mine. I got this one from Jess at Roots and Refuge, and she has said this a couple of times, and it's really, really resonated with me. And to anyone that comes to me saying that they're feeling overwhelmed, I give them the same advice. And that is, if you are juggling lots of balls all at the same time, work out which ones are glass and will shatter if you drop them, and which ones are rubber and will bounce back. So how do you work out which balls are made of glass and which balls are made of rubber? To me, that is in 10, 15, 20 years time, if I look back and say, I am so glad I invested my time in that, that's a glass ball. So that could be family, that could be your kids, that could be your siblings, that could be your parents, perhaps you're a carer. That's a glass ball. You cannot drop that, because that time can never be got back. Similarly, unfortunately, most of us rely on jobs for us to keep going and to live. That is a glass ball. So work, glass ball. What I would say though is break your work down into segments, and I'm sure you will find some rubber balls within there that you can drop. Now I'm going to say something fairly controversial, especially as a YouTuber in the gardening sphere, but I consider the garden a rubber ball. If you drop it for a few weeks, for a few months, even for an entire season, yes, it will go to weeds. Potentially your harvest won't be as abundant as you hoped, and yeah, you may have wasted a few packets of seeds. But the wonderful thing about gardening is that it is seasonal and it is cyclical. And so there is always next season, next year to pick up and start again once you've laid some of the other balls to rest. And I think that's probably why people say that gardening is so good for your health. Yes, it can be stressful. Yes, it can be overwhelming, but it doesn't matter what you do. The plants want to grow, the seeds want to sprout, the earth wants to hold all of this wonderful harvest for you. And so even though I have really truly half-assed all of my gardens this year, I'm still getting harvests from them. And I wouldn't say the harvest is everything. I would say the joy of being outside and the joy of working on an ongoing project is also very much a part of it. So yeah, be kind to yourself, because even after months of neglect, the garden will forgive you. So anyway, thank you for hanging out with me today, and whether you're an existing subscriber or whether you've just found me by searching Gardening with Overwhelm, I just want you to know you're doing a great job. And whether that's because you've been in the garden every day, once a week, or whether you've taken a break, you're doing what you need to do, and that in itself is enough. But I also hope that some of these things that I've learnt this year will be helpful to you. If you've got any other tips for anybody else who is looking for help, drop them in the comments below, and I hope you'll stick around for the next one. I'll see you then. Bye.